like you, if it's all right for you to do so, I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment and take a few easy breaths, because I want you to picture something. I want you to imagine that following this meeting, following this lunchtime, you're going to be going to another meeting, a meeting where you want it to go really well. You've got an item on the agenda and it's something that you feel strongly about. So you want it to go really well. And if you've got one of those meetings coming up, you know how you'd have prepared for it. Perhaps you put some presentation slides together, some notes, and maybe like the night before you were going over in your head exactly what you wanted to say, all of those key points, and maybe even thinking about the questions that you might get asked during it, because you want to give everybody the best possible value from what you're talking about. And then maybe you haven't had time for lunch, you just grab a coffee, you go into the meeting, you've got your notes, everybody's there, and you really want to make a good impression on them. And you hardly even listen to the rest of the agenda because you're so focused on what it is you want to say. And then just before your item comes up, your heart starts to thump a little bit and you think, oh, just getting a little bit maybe excited or a little bit stressed about it. And then the heat starts to build in your body and starts to travel up into your chest, into your neck, into your face. And as everybody turns to look at you, suddenly you've gone red and maybe your hands are sweating and you open your mouth to say something, all of those words you prepared, and they've all just turned to ash in your mouth. You can't even remember what you were going to say to start. Take another deep breath, let it out, and then shake out that image. I want you to shake all that out, but just remember what that felt like for a moment, because that's what it can feel like when you're in menopause. That there's so many things you want to do, but you're worried that at the moment that you go to do them, you're going to get a hot flush or you're going to get brain fog, your memory is going to go. And that can happen to about 75% of women in surveys that are done consistently. There's about 75% of women who say that they experience menopause symptoms to the extent that they think that it affects them at work. 25% of women sail through it, not a problem at all. I meet a lot of those women who say, it's just like when I was a teenager, I had a couple of spots on my face, my period started, it was over. But for other women, it can be a completely different experience. So I'm going to share some slides with you just to explain what is happening at this stage of life. So I call this primary menopause because we know that menopause can take different forms. Some women are just going to go through it naturally as they get into their late 40s, early 50s. But other women will go through what's called premature ovarian failure. All these words are so kind of judgmental, it's a failure, but quite naturally, some women go into menopause before they're 40. You could go into it at any time after your periods start. There may be no medical reason, it's just the way your body is set up. Or it could be that you have a hysterectomy for another reason, or even some medical treatments like treatment for cancer can take you into menopause. So here I'm talking about primary menopause where there is no other reason for you going through it. And hopefully you can see from that graph that the levels of the reproductive hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are going into decline. They're reducing as you head into your late 20s, early 30s. That might be earlier than you thought. And so as you get to 35 and towards 50, that reduction is gathering pace. And you can also see that the levels of estrogen and progesterone, they change their ratio. So the progesterone goes into decline quicker. And what that means practically is you go into something called estrogen dominance. Even though your estrogen is reducing, the ratio of estrogen to progesterone is increasing. And that can lead to some of the symptoms. But life isn't that simple. This image is a little bit fuzzy, but I think it's really important because you'll see there that the line goes up and down a lot more. So those hormones don't just smoothly go into decline, they are spurting and reducing. And that means that sometimes you might be at the normal level, and at other times you're at much lower levels. So you could go for a blood test and be told you're in the normal range for your age, and then the next day it could be something completely different. And that's really important. But what I also like about this graph, because this is where some of the good news comes from, is that you can see that pink line, which is testosterone. Now, as women, we have testosterone as well as men having it. We don't have as much as men do, but we have some. And although that is also reducing at this stage of life, you can see the ratio of it isn't decreasing at the same amount. So we actually get into a bit of testosterone dominance there. Now, that can be a good thing because testosterone is what gives us a bit of a boost and gives us some confidence. We will come back to that testosterone. But I want to talk about the symptoms because when I was going into menopause, I was in my late 40s. So this is the phrase that's the name of perimenopause, which is that period before your periods actually stop, which is menopause, and after your periods have stopped when you're still getting symptoms. Now, at that stage of my life, in my late 40s, I was working at a senior management level in a big government department. I was commuting for at least 3 hours a day, closer to 4 hours a day. I had a home and a family, and I was also studying for an MBA because I didn't have quite enough stress in my life. And one of the things that I hadn't been told about was the fact that brain fog was a thing. I've always been an Olympic sleeper, 8 hours of sleep a night is great. But I was starting to get disrupted sleep. And then when I was at work, I would feel like I needed to have a new pair of glasses. It was like the world had gone out of focus and my thinking wasn't as straight as it used to be. Now, that brain fog is a very common experience at menopause. I'll go on to the brain fog, but just talking about the physical symptoms, I was worried that because I traveled a lot, and I'm sure a lot of you do, or used to when you could, or even if you're commuting, I was concerned that I'd be sitting on the train and I'd start to get really hot and have hot flushes. And they can be embarrassing because suddenly you're really hot, you're trying to strip your clothes off, your face has gone red. And it is a very common symptom at menopause, and it's to do with that estrogen dominance, which causes a cardiovascular response, the heart beating faster. Some women, if they've experienced headaches in the past or migraines, find that they get more of that. And with that, just hopping back again to the hot flushes, I've worked with women one-to-one who've had up to 50 hot flushes a day. So if somebody tells you, oh, well, it's just being a bit hot, if you're having 50 a day and during the night, that can be very disturbing and can really knock your confidence. I also knew a woman who worked as a jeweler, and if she got a hot flush and started to sweat, she would make the silver go black. It's that kind of thing that can really disrupt you at work. Changes to periods. So there's that common conception that, as you're heading towards menopause, when they're going to stop, that probably they get a bit lighter, the periods get a bit lighter and less frequent, but actually they can become more or less frequent, they can become heavier or lighter before they eventually stop. So you might want to look at Danella's products around the menopause cups, the menstrual cups, because you don't know when they're going to stop or how they're going to change. Poor quality sleep. Sleep is often the first victim of menopause because of these changes in the hormones that might mean that you get night sweats, or you might just feel a bit more anxious and it stops you from sleeping. And all of that leading to low energy and fatigue. Fatigue is more than feeling a bit tired. It's that feeling like you can hardly move your body. Some other symptoms: weight change. Women do get concerned about their body change, and this is partly because those changes to the reproductive hormones also have effect on what are called our major hormones. I think most women would think that their reproductive hormones are their major hormones, but actually adrenaline, cortisol, thyroid, and insulin, these are all your major hormones. And because estrogen is such a powerful hormone, it has an effect on those other hormones as well. And it can affect your thyroid and how well it functions, but it can also affect your pancreas and the production of insulin, which means that you're not as tolerant of some of the sugary foods that you used to be able to process. A lot of women worry about loss of bone density. Again, because estrogen is such a powerful growth hormone, it helps us to create bone density. And women who go into early menopause or have hysterectomy are often advised to take HRT to protect their bones and their heart health. Vaginal dryness, not a subject that is talked about a lot, but it can be an issue at menopause. And it's not just that it can lead to a decrease in libido, but also that it can just feel uncomfortable. And there are things that you can do about that dryness. And sometimes you might feel it necessary to use some form of lubrication. And again, Danella's company, Intimina, have some very good products that will help you with vaginal dryness. Some women experience a bit of hair loss. Don't worry, I am going to get you out of the doom and gloom, but if I don't paint that picture, some women say, well, what about this or what about that? Is this a symptom? Is that a symptom? You see there's such a range of symptoms. So if you were subject to mood swings when you're having periods, then it's quite likely that you'll find you'll get mood swings at menopause as well. Anxiety. A lot of women experience higher levels of anxiety. And again, this is partly because of the effect on the glands that produce adrenaline and cortisol. They steal away some of the progesterone that you get that would have been the thing that helped to keep you in a good place emotionally, and can lead to you feeling more anxious. So it is quite common for women to feel more anxious at this stage of life, not for any reason. Feelings of stress. Well, let's face it, at this stage in life, we're probably pretty busy. We're managing our careers, we're looking after the home, you might have children that you're still looking after, and you may have got to that stage where you're also looking after elderly parents as well. So there is a lot going on at the same time as you're dealing with all these hormonal changes. It's a bit different. I mean, it's the same process as you went through at puberty, but now you've got a lot more going on in your life. All of that can lead to some low mood, a bit of depression, and a loss of confidence. And this, of course, affects women in the workplace, just feeling less confident than they did before. Might even be feelings of anger. You might be feeling angry now just reading these lists and thinking, what have I got to go through all of this? So, you know, some women just do feel more angry. And sometimes they feel angry because when they try and talk about it, they're not getting the support that they need. Just a few things. I mentioned the brain fog that I experienced. I'd love to know in the chat box if any of you have noticed this brain fog where you just think, why aren't I thinking clearly? How can't I remember my children's names? I used to be really good at remembering everybody's birthdays, and they've all just gone. I won't even mention like getting to the top of the stairs and not remembering why you went up there. And some of that memory loss. Of course, this can be connected to not sleeping so well. A loss of clarity, like what was it I wanted? Who am I? Some women feel like they're losing themselves at this stage of life and what they wanted to do. Problems making decisions, all connected to the brain fog. Now, there is an impact on workplace performance. When I first started talking about this subject 12 years ago now, There wasn't much research into workplace performance. It was one of those things that we didn't really talk about that much, about what was happening with women at this stage of life. There is a lot more research now, there's a lot more talked about now, and there's a lot more guidance for employers now. So that impaired performance can be with the lack of sleep. It could be with the brain clarity issue, can lead to you not working as well at work as you used to work. Absenteeism. So some women feel that they just need to take some days off because they just don't feel right. They might need to sleep in a bit later in the morning because they just haven't slept so well. So absenteeism is a problem. Sorry, if anybody else has got their microphone on, could you just switch it off for me? Thank you. Presenteeism, and that's being at work but not really being there. So you've struggled into work, you're trying to do your job, but you just don't feel up to it. Working within your capabilities. And what do I mean by that? Well, some women feel like although they wanted to get further in their careers, they wanted to do more development, perhaps they wanted a managerial role, but now they think, I don't really want to push myself because I don't feel well enough. So they stop themselves from doing their development, their career development at work, and they work well within their capabilities and their comfort zone. That's not good for you, and it's not good for the organization that you work for. You might even feel a bit frustrated about it. Now, here's a real surprise, or it was a real surprise for me when I saw the research on this. 25% of women consider leaving their jobs because of the effects of menopause. 25%. There isn't a statistic for how many actually do it, but I've talked to a lot of women who have been doing really important work. They've put 30 years of their life into developing their careers, and then they just think, do you know what? I just can't do this anymore. And instead of talking to their employers, talking to their managers about this subject, they leave. Nobody knows why they went. They probably give some excuse about wanting more work-life balance, or just anything, rather than talk about what they're experiencing. And all of that knowledge walks out of the door. And this is a subject that really isn't talked about that much, is the impact on women's financial security. So even if you're thinking, I can get through this, I don't need to do that much about it, it will pass, which is true. But think about what it's doing to your financial security. We know about the gender pay gap in the UK. The gender pay gap, despite years of work on it, is still around 16%. So women doing similar jobs to men, and they're still earning 16% less. I can tell you that I am so old that when I started work, I worked for an insurance company, and the women's pay scale was automatically 10% less than the men's pay scale. Didn't matter what role you were doing. I hope that you will put horrified comments in the chat box, but it didn't matter where you were starting, what level you were at, you were automatically on a scale that was 10% less than the men. That doesn't exist anymore, but we still haven't caught up financially. But this has another impact because there is a gender pension gap that is way bigger. Women's pension pots are up to 40% less than men's. I'm giving you a moment just to let that sink in. Now, part of the reason for that is initially the gender pay gap, but also women take time off in order to look after their families when they have children. But they also make decisions when they get to menopause that affects their pensions. I've already talked about working within your capabilities, not going for that promotion, not seeking to develop. But it might also be that you just ask to work part-time, thinking, well, it's only for a couple of years, but that's impacting on your pension. Going for a job that's less demanding, at less money. All of that means that when you get to wanting to retire, you haven't got the money in your pension pot. So this is something that we really need to take seriously. Right, okay, I'm shaking out again all of that doom and gloom, because there are a lot of benefits that come about when you're post-menopause. Menopause isn't an illness, it's just a natural transition from one stage of our reproductive life to the other. Just as when you were a teenager, you moved from being a child into being a teenager. It's just the same, it's just happening in reverse. So here's this woman looking absolutely delighted because she's not having monthly cycles anymore. Now, if you had heavy periods or you got fed up with carrying around all the paraphernalia to do with your periods, you will be very happy when you don't have them anymore. It also gets you out of the reproduction issues, so you're not worried anymore about getting pregnant. Less childcare responsibilities. As you head into your late 40s, early 50s, you've probably got less childcare responsibilities that you had. So now you've got more headspace for your own career. You know, when women talk about this is my time, and I've seen that happening a lot with women at this stage of life. More energy. So you're not having the reproductive cycles anymore. You're not having the mood cycles anymore once your periods have finished. And it could be that that testosterone has kicked in and now you're feeling more energy and a rise in happiness levels, because women tend to hit a low point in their happiness levels. In research projects, women's happiness is probably at its lowest level when they're in their mid-40s because of everything that's going on. And then it steadily rises into your 50s, your 60s, into your 70s. And I can say that's absolutely true. So when I hit menopause, I was around 53, 54. I said before, I was working at high levels in government, doing management. And then one day I'm walking to work. It's a spring morning, the sun's shining. It's glinting off of Buckingham Palace in the distance because I worked in central London. I've got a very good job. I'm earning good money. I've got 2 teams. I'm working in a beautiful office. And on the way to work, I'm crying because I realized I just wasn't happy anymore. Now, some women get to this stage of wanting to make a change at menopause because they've just realized there was something more they wanted to do. Other women, we need to kind of realize it slowly that we're not happy doing what we're doing. And for other women, it might take a bit more of a nudge from the universe. It might take a bit of a slap, actually, for you to go, do you know, I'm really not happy now and I want to do something new. And with the childcare responsibilities out of the way, you're not worried about having babies anymore, you've got more energy, suddenly you're freed up to do something new. And I've met a lot of women who have made major life changes at this stage, and they're using all of that knowledge and experience that they've gained from the early stages in their life in order to do something completely new and different. What I did at that stage was to come home and say to my husband, I can't go on doing what I'm doing now until I'm 65. I'm not doing this another 10 years. And he said, I know, what is it you want to do? And I said, I don't know yet, but I'm starting to build up some ideas. And to cut a long story short, I knew that I was interested in neuro-linguistic programming. I knew I was interested how the mind-body works. I decided to sign up for a course that would take 10 months, a weekend a month for 10 months. And it was starting a few months later. And I would be able to do it at weekends while carrying on with the job that I was doing and then see where it went. The universe was so pleased with me that I was offered early retirement at work. And by the time I started my course, I knew that I was taking early retirement. And it was slightly scary, but I was ready for it. I wanted to do something new. And as you can see, we're now 12 years later, and I love what I'm doing. And it's opened up all sorts of travel opportunities for me, networking opportunities, which is how I met Alessandra. And it's such good fun. So I want to go on. I can see people are asking questions, but I'm going to talk a bit briefly about what you can do now about menopause. If otherwise you would rather I stop talking and answer the questions, Alessandra, you can unmute yourself and just tell me.
I think, Pat, if you finish your presentation and
Yes.
then we take the questions, I think people are making some really relevant comments, asking some questions, but we can do all of that in the last maybe 10, 15 minutes before
Okay. I'll keep an eye on my time. I might answer some of the questions as we're going along.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
you, Alessandra. So medication, the most common medication for menopause is hormone replacement therapy. I could say a lot about that. It normally comes as estrogen and progesterone, some mix of the two, although sometimes it could be just estrogen. And there are so many, if I call it delivery vehicles for hormone replacement therapy. It can be tablets, patches, gels, pessaries. There are many different forms of it now. Now, back in 2001, there was a World Health Initiative report on HRT and the use of estrogen that was very scary because it said that it could lead to breast cancer and blood clotting and strokes. And a lot of women then just decided it wasn't for them, and a lot of doctors stopped prescribing it. There's been a lot of discussion since then about HRT. There's a lot of developments in dosages, a lot of developments in how it's delivered. It's very important to do your research and decide whether it's for you or not. It's not for everybody. And you should think about what the current thinking is around it and take some advice and talk to somebody if it's a path you want to go down. Bioidentical hormone replacement therapy is very similar. It's just that it is formulated from products such as wild yams. It's mainly plant-based. You might have a lot of questions about that. I do have a video that I recorded with a doctor in New York about that. So if you're interested in that, I'm very happy to share that video where he talks about it because he did his research into it because his wife needed estrogen. Something else that's commonly prescribed for women at menopause is antidepressants. Antidepressants are okay if you're actually depressed, but antidepressants aren't actually licensed for treatment of menopause or hot flushes, and yet they are commonly prescribed. So it's one thing if you are actually depressed. If you're given them without any kind of testing, then it is something to raise with your medical practitioner about whether this is the right thing for you. Sleeping tablets, if you've got a sleep issue, commonly prescribed, but often only after you've been experiencing sleep issues for at least a month, 2 months, because sleeping tablets don't give you natural sleep. They might just get you over the issue of not sleeping, but there are other things you'll need to do in order to put together a better sleep pattern. Complementary therapies. This is a picture of me when my hair was much shorter. I'm still waiting. I'm having my hair cut in a couple of weeks. So it had grown a bit before COVID set in. I trained as a hypnotherapist during using neurolinguistic programming. Hypnotherapy has been shown to be very effective in helping women with sleep issues, with anxiety, and with hot flushes. There was a research project done on women experiencing hot flushes due to medication for cancer, and it was shown to be non-invasive and very powerful way of helping to reduce hot flushes. Lots of other things I do with women around hypnotherapy as well.
Sorry if I interrupt you. There is a question. Having just said that we would take questions at the end, there is one from Claire who says she has to go shortly, and I wonder if it might be just a quick answer that you could provide. She's asking whether after an hysterectomy and she didn't take HRT, whether that's still an option and whether she should have taken it. Is that something that you can answer now, or maybe take separately, maybe in an email?
If she emails me, I can point her in certain directions because there are a lot of variables around how old she is, how old she was when she had the hysterectomy, the reasons for the hysterectomy. I'd be very happy to talk to her afterwards.
Okay, Claire, maybe you want to share your email address, and so Pata has it as well. Otherwise, I will.
Lovely. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Claire, but yeah, I'm very happy to talk to you about that. That's a really good question. Yeah, so cognitive behavioral therapy is where you look at the thoughts that are driving, for example, your anxiety or your loss of confidence. And CBT is something that's available on the National Health Service here in the UK. And also you can find private practitioners. I use some of those techniques in the work that I do. Again, suitable for some people, not so suitable for other people. Reflexology is a very natural therapy. If you've never had it, it's very restful. The massaging of the feet and using the meridians in the feet to help you to relax and to help to balance your system. So reflexology can be a really nice complementary therapy to use. Homeopathy, those of you, I was sort of hesitating there because if you're watching this call over in mainland Europe, you probably are more used to using homeopathy than here in the UK. Here in the UK, it's very much seen as a complementary, but not used as much as it is in other countries, such as in France, where I've been into pharmacies where there's a really big section of homeopathic remedies. Here you've got to search through the counters to find it. But because homeopathy is based on each individual, their constitution, what they're experiencing, it's better not to take off-the-shelf remedies. It's better to go and see a registered homeopath and actually get something that's prescribed for you. Herbal remedies, again, these are very readily available, mainly in this country, in the UK, in health food shops. Herbal remedies can be very powerful, and often the ones that are used for menopause are used because they have what are called phytoestrogens in them. Those are plant estrogens, and plant estrogens are a good way of supplementing our natural estrogens. So things like Agnus castus or red clover or black cohosh or evening primrose oil. These are common herbal remedies. Again, it's important to talk to a registered herbalist about these because they are powerful remedies. We might think of herbs as something gentle, but actually what the chemicals they contain are very powerful. And there are some herbal remedies that you should really only take for like 2 or 3 months because they can affect other parts of the body, particularly the liver can get affected by some of these. And if you're already on other medications, it's important to find out that they're not going to fight with the other medications. Traditional Chinese Traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture can be very helpful, again, in balancing out the body. I normally go to an acupuncturist once a year because my system gets very slow and low in the autumn, and I have to kind of get fired back up again for the winter. But I want to spend a little bit of time on self-help as well, because there's a lot you can do to support your own body at this stage of life. So what you're eating and what you're not eating, what you're drinking, what you're not drinking, very important at this stage of life. So the things to eat are those things that contain the phytoestrogens that will help to balance your system out. So things like chickpeas and hummus and lentils and some of the fermented foods like miso and tempeh and tofu, because these foods help your system to produce more estrogen. There are other foods that are really important just generally. So for our brains, we need the omega-3 oils. So eating fatty fish, avocados, very important, walnuts, all help our brain function, particularly if you're experiencing a bit of brain fog. Drinking plenty of water, staying hydrated. And other things like, making sure you're getting enough fiber. So a really important food that is very simple is flax seeds or linseeds. You can add them to your cereal, you can add them to your baking. Flax seeds and linseeds, the same thing, just given different names. Really important source of fiber, and again, phytoestrogens and those oils. Very easy just to put into your diet. I had some on my cereal this morning. I'm pleased to say I haven't got any stuck in my teeth. I was doing one of these presentations a few weeks ago and I could just feel a linseed stuck in my tooth. It wasn't very helpful. Things not to eat. It's all the things that you would think of as being unhealthy and some of the things that you absolutely love. So I'm not popular at this stage. The sugary foods, the simple carbohydrates, these are things that are going to stress out your pancreas and make it much harder to digest. Alcohol is not your friend at this stage of life. You may think, oh, I sleep a bit better if I have that glass of red wine in the evening. It's stressing out your liver. The sugars in it aren't helping you. It may cause you to have more hot flushes, and it doesn't help you to sleep better. So there are lots of things about what you're eating and drinking. And so chocolate, dark chocolate, we know that's good for us. The milk chocolates, the sweet chocolates, again, it's that problem with the sugar and the caffeine in the chocolate that can be a bit of an issue. So very important to look at your nutrition. Exercise. So that's really important for our bones as well as our heart function. One of the things that estrogen does is it protects our hearts. And so as we get into our 40s and 50s, really important to be exercising, even if, and I'm going to say just, but I shouldn't say just going out for a walk every day, a 20-minute walk every day, or two 10-minute walks where you're not exactly power walking, but you're walking a little bit faster, helps your heart, helps your bones, because things like swimming and yoga will be really good for your flexibility and for your heart function, not as good for your bones, because we need to be stimulating the bones to actually produce more bone density. You've got to start from where you are. If you're younger and you're already exercising, excellent. Make sure that you keep it up into your 40s and 50s. If you haven't been exercising, then start slowly. Find an exercise you enjoy. Dancing is brilliant. Walking is brilliant. Find something that gets your heart beating a little bit faster. Gardening is good for you. Power gardening. I was just thinking of power gardening, running around the garden, planting seeds. I'm not sure that would work. But all that bending, the lifting, the stretching is really good for your body. But it's about consistency. So what would you enjoy doing? Do you like exercising on your own? Do you prefer going to a gym? Do you like being in a class? Find something you enjoy and do that. Think about your lifestyle. So here, if you are smoking, stop it, because if you need help, get the help in order to stop it, because smoking is not going to help your heart, your lungs, all your other functions. The fact that the chemicals in cigarettes speed your heart up, it's probably going to make you have a hot flush as well. So not so good. I've already mentioned the alcohol. I know it's not popular, but honestly, alcohol is like one of those friends who says they're really nice to your face, and then behind your back, it's whispering at you. Practicing stress reduction. So here, it's a really good idea to be doing something like yoga or Pilates, meditation, mindfulness, because these are going to help you to reduce your stress. Looking at what you're putting your focus on, looking at your time management, anything that helps you to reduce that stress down, because stress is one of the triggers for the symptoms of menopause. Seeking support. Now, a lot of women, when they're experiencing menopause, keep the problem to themselves. They think that nobody else is experiencing it. When I run online courses or face-to-face courses, and women start talking about what they're experiencing, they say things like, I thought that was only me. I didn't like to mention it. you know, it doesn't matter whether it's having hot flushes or feeling sweaty or thinking that, you know, you're losing your confidence, or whether it is about feeling vaginal dryness and not wanting to talk about it. We're all women. Talk to your friends about it, get them talking. But there are other ways of getting support as well. There are online support groups. I have Facebook groups. I've got LinkedIn groups. The support is out there, and it's just about getting over any sort of embarrassment that you have and seeking support. I also do training for organizations, because in the workplace, support is really important, so you can talk to your manager or an HR person or an occupational health person or even an equality and diversity person, so that you can get the support you need in the workplace. It might just be that you need better access to drinking water, or you need a fan on your desk, or if you wear uniform, you need some kind of adjustment to your uniform, or maybe even somewhere to go and lay down at lunchtime because you're tired. All of these are reasonable adjustments in the workplace, and a lot more organizations are now realizing that and doing more to support the women, their women employees. So this, I've just mentioned some of my books. My first book, which is one of the prizes today, is Hot Women Cool Solutions. I wrote that back in 2012 to explain something about menopause and the things that you can do. So a lot of what I've talked about today in terms of the mind-body work, but also about, you know, what you're eating and drinking. And then I realized that that nutrition part was so important that I wrote Cool Recipes for Hot Women with a nutritionist so she could say more about what was really important. And then my latest book, Menopause Mind the Gap, is more for you if you're in the workplace or if you have employers who need to know more about this. So I am going to stop sharing my screen now because I can't wait to see all these questions. I'm also going to put a link, and I think probably Danella will send it out with a follow-up email, but this is for those of you who just can't wait. It's a link to part of my website where there are some free gifts for you, and the first chapter of my latest book is in there as well. So you can read all this stuff that I've been telling you about how it affects us in the workplace. Excellent. So, Alessandra, do you want to take me through the questions, or should I just look in the chat there?
So, I mean, there was a question about the mildness of the symptoms. So, does that depend? I guess that Daniela is making a point about if you're fairly healthy, if you follow your nutrition, you're careful with your exercise, does that mean that automatically the symptoms are going to be milder? Is there a direct link?
Yeah, because I think a lot of women think that how they'll experience menopause will be down to how their mother experienced menopause. You know, if my mum had a bad time, I'm probably going to have a bad time. If my mum had a good time, I'm going to be okay. But you know, your genes are only part of the story, and you've only got 50% of your mum's genes anyway. So what your mother experienced will be an indication of when your menopause might occur, but not much more than that. And that whole living a healthy lifestyle means that your body will be in much better condition to deal with menopause than if you were, you know, generally thinking it doesn't really matter, I'll deal with it when it gets there. So if you've already established a healthy diet, if you're exercising regularly, if you're doing all the things we just talked about, then your risk factors of a bad menopause or an unhealthy menopause are much lower. So it pays to be living a healthy lifestyle, basically. Invest in your future now.
Yeah. And thank you, Pat, for this. And there's also quite a few comments around the hormone replacement therapy. I think is one of the areas which is that women feel less comfortable with. So maybe can you go a little bit sort of deeper into the topic? If we've got a couple of minutes to spare, can you tell us a little bit more about you know, if you're considering it, what are the questions that you should ask yourself? There's a couple of ladies who say, I could have taken it, I haven't, or I'm taking it, I see no changes. What's the right approach, if there is one?
Well, I think that's why I'd like to share the video link with you of me talking to the doctor.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that I could say about it. As I say, there was a lot of fear around it in the early 2000s because of the research project that was done around it that was stopped because of the high incidence of cancer. But the results of that have been challenged a lot. Now, a lot of women, some women will say, I am just going to take HRT as soon as I find out that that I'm going through menopause. And other women say, no, I want to take a more natural approach to it. So some of it is just your attitude generally to how you feel about medication. Some of it is if there's a family history of cancer, of strokes, of thrombosis, then it's a conversation to have with your doctor if you're thinking of taking it. So some doctors who are real advocates of it will say, if you don't take it, you're just stupid because it's going to really help you. Other doctors who don't advocate it will be much more, well, let's see if there's something else we can do. That's why it's really important. The best advice I can give you is to look into it yourself. So when you go to a medical professional, you kind of know enough about it to have that intelligent conversation and not just get pushed one way or the other. So that's why I'd really love to share that video. So I'll send you the link to it, Alessandra, so
Yes,
you
please.
can send it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we also talk about, we mentioned the brain fog, and certainly I said that's me. So this is one question from me. I do find myself forgetting things all the time, particularly the silly things, the daily things. And what can you, I live with list, but what can you do besides that?
Yeah, so there's those very practical things of, finding strategies that work for you, whether it's post-it notes or lists or whatever you do, but also that brain health that's really important. It is, making sure that you drink plenty of water during the day. Brains need to be well hydrated. They don't work well when you're getting thirsty. Eating those essential fatty acids, the oily fish and the flax seeds and the avocados. We need that fat to help the brain to function. Avoiding the things that kind of inflame the brain a bit, again, not popular. Caffeine winds your system up. So if you have your early morning cup of coffee, leave it there and then don't drink it during the rest of the day. So there are certain nutritional things you can do. Getting exercise first thing in the morning is really helpful. If you exercise first thing in the morning, it gets the blood going to your brain. It helps to create the brain cells that you use during the day. And I was just watching something. I got my husband drinking kefir. I hope everybody's heard of kefir. See, my brain's just gone now. It's a fermented milk drink, and fermented things can be really helpful for our gut health, and our gut health has an effect on our brain health. And it was saying on this particular broadcast how good kefir is for your brain. So things like live yogurt and kefir, just eating those can be really helpful.
Excellent. Kefir, yes, I've come across it. I've drunk it. It's quite delicious.
Yeah.
Doing without coffee, much harder for me. Anyway.
I have matcha in the morning now, matcha green tea. I have a matcha latte every morning. It's become my lockdown thing. And it's full of antioxidants, so it's really helpful. It does have caffeine in it, so it gets me going a bit. It's just a bit healthier than the coffee.
Yeah. Any other question? I just wondered, I'm just going through the list if there is anything that any of you...
Can I just ask Danella if she's got anything
Absolutely.
to add? Because I very briefly went through the whole menstrual cycle and the issue around vaginal dryness. I don't know if you want to add to that, Danella.
Absolutely, yeah.
To be honest, I was learning a lot during this hour, as I'm in the age where I will now, in few years, I will experience my estrogen level, how is dropping. Yes, basically, I mean, I could only just underline what you said, especially I can maybe jump in on some things regarding intimate health when talking about menstruation, which is also being unfortunately a taboo along with menopause and other topics as well. I was basically in Intimina's portfolio, there is one product which could be useful for participants here maybe. It is our feminine moisturizer, which is good for people experiencing vaginal dryness. And I will be the one who will just say that it is our product, which we don't actually promote a lot because it's not one of the flagship products, but it's one of the #1 bestsellers because people are buying it. And of course, not only maybe for sexual better sexual relations, but definitely just when you're starting experiencing vaginal dryness, which is maybe a thing that is basically women of younger age are experiencing that as well, not only due to hormonal changes in body, but also due to using tampons or maybe some other intimate products which aren't quite healthy for themselves. But I wouldn't go a lot with the period talks because this is another topic to cover. If we are getting a bit at the end of this meeting panel, I would just say that we prepared with Pat and Alessandra one nice package for women who were going, who filled out our quiz. And we winners of our gift package, which includes Pat's book, How to Manage Menopause Symptoms Using Mind-Body Techniques, and our Kegel Smart device, which is very good device for strengthening pelvic floor muscles, which we now heard are very, very important. Feminine moisturizer and a menstrual cup. And the winners are, I'm not sure if they're now here, but they are Angela, Salma, and Maria Therese. I hope I pronounced their...
I'm not quite sure whether they are here, but we will try to, of course, we will reach out to them. I'm not sure whether they are. If they are, you can say hello, but I have the feeling that they are not. Yes. And in any case, all Pat's books and your products are also available on your respective website. So people can always investigate what is available. We only have a couple of minutes left. I don't know whether there is anything else that can be helpful. I mean, is there anything? What do you think, Pat, is the most common question that women ask you when they come to you for support? So, what are the 2 or 3 things that you kind of find women experience over and over again?
I think the most common ones are poor sleep, hot flushes, and anxiety. And they're all linked. You know, if you're having hot flushes and they're occurring at night, they're going to disturb your sleep. If you're not sleeping well, you're going to feel anxious. You know, it's a vicious circle of it, and it's being proactive. I think that's my biggest tip is what one thing could you change today? What one small thing could you do that would change things? Is there something you could stop eating or drinking? Is there something you could start including? Is there an exercise that you could do? You know, could you fit in 10 minutes walking in the morning? or 10 minutes at lunchtime, or parking a bit further from the office, or whatever. If you don't take action, then you're just sitting back and saying, well, I hope it's going to end soon. And somebody's asked, you know, how long do symptoms last? It's unpredictable. You might only have symptoms for a year. You might have them for 10 years. You know, if you're going to sit there and just wait, you might have a lot of time when you're thinking, I hope this gets better soon, rather than, well, what could I start doing? What little action could I take today that wouldn't cause me problems and might make me a bit better? So please do some research, take action, and start feeling better, and don't suffer in silence.
Excellent. Thank you very much about all of this. I just want to take a minute to thank you, Pat, and thank you, Daniela, for the support today. And let me just turn my camera on as well. So, yes, thank you again. As mentioned, we will be sharing the recording. It will be edited a little bit, but it will be with you. I don't know whether, Pat, you are also happy to share your presentation, because that we could include immediately as sort of in the follow-up email or aspect of it. And otherwise, I think that it will be very possible for any of you, if you have further questions, to contact either Pat or Daniela by email. And again, find out a little bit more, including about the menstrual cup, if you are still using it. As Daniela mentioned, that for her has been a huge discovery, but something quite new. And yes, I subscribe to that. I wish I discovered it much earlier in my life. And so very, very many thanks for attending today, and for being, you know, active participant, for your messages and your question, and look forward to staying in touch with all of you. And thank you again, Pat and Daniela, and take care.
Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you to everybody. Thanks for all your questions.
Thank you. Bye now.